Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today it's time to talk about the surprise album from Drake, titled, If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. I didn't expect this to happen. But you know what, the more I think about it, the more I really should have expected it. See, after Drake released Nothing Was the Same in 2013 in the late half of that year, you could tell that he was looking for more of the acceptance of other hip-hop artists and lyricists. Even though he was technically an A-list rapper, one of the few that can notch bona fide hits in today's day and age on the radio, a lot of his music was unfortunately being dismissed as just being for girls or for the mass public, especially considering that many of his albums also had a really strong R&B bent to them. Now, this wasn't exactly true, as he was lauded by plenty of critics and hip-hop fans for bringing a unique sound and style to the table. A darker, bleaker vibe that often implied more depth than it really had. Oh well, might as well cut to the chase. I've never really been blown away by Drake, I'll be honest here. Does he have good bars on occasion? Yeah, but a few lines that I'd consider amazing. And his technical limitations as a songwriter with sloppy rhyming often proved to be really irritating for me. Honestly, I tend to like his R&B side a lot more. It's expressive and moody, and allows him to eschew some of his weaknesses as a technical MC. I like him a lot more in that vein. But that didn't seem to be the direction that Drake wanted to go, and his biggest hits of 2014 were dark, minimalist, straight-up hip-hop tracks like Believe Me and 0 to 100 The Catch-Up, which should see him improve as a lyricist, but his content was not engaging to me whatsoever. For as much as Drake was trying to be hard, I just didn't buy it. He didn't have the menacing presence or intimidating voice of a gangster rapper or hard-edged MC, and many of his bars felt like half measures, never really putting his neck on the line or dropping a name at the artist that he was trying to challenge and call out. Hell, that was often my issue with his more emotive raps as well. It was always subtext and implied, not actual text to back it up, and you could only coast by for so long before actually putting your money where your mouth is. Well, maybe this was the chance for him to actually do that, because out of nowhere, Drake dropped a full album on iTunes. Not really a mixtape, it was available for cash, which means he got his samples cleared. And as a marketing decision on that note, it was a masterstroke. Forget Kanye rolling out his fashion line, forget that upcoming album from Big Sean called Dark Sky Paradise, I'm sorry, that's still funny to me. Forget that collaboration album between Chris Brown and Tyga. Drake quite literally stole all the hype from underneath their noses here. And coupled with Lil Wayne's threats to take Nicki Minaj and Drake with him on his exit from Cash Money, you've gotta wonder if this was Drake's step to fulfilling his contract by repackaging what could have been considered a hip-hop mixtape as a full album, with few features and a much tighter focus on pure hard-edged hip-hop. So could this be the hard-hitting record from Drake that earns him the respect that he clearly desires? Honestly, I doubt it. In fact, I've listened through this record nearly a dozen times since it dropped, and it's still a little murky on what Drake was trying to do with this mixtape and album. On the one hand, it's got the flow and feel of a mixtape. In terms of themes and progression, while it might flow well instrumentally, it feels inconsistent lyrically and thematically. And this was something he cobbled together in order to break away from Cash Money? Oh, well, I'd buy it. Oh, forgetting all that, overall, how's the album? Well, it's good. It's decent enough. I'm not blown away by it in the slightest, nowhere close to the new Doomtree, Lupe Fiasco, or Joey Badass albums, but I don't hate this. If anything, the emotion I get from it is frustration, because this album gave me snippets of what Drake could do as more conscious, insightful, thoughtful MC, and then he spends most of this record bragging, making ignorant tracks. Lovely. But before we get to all that, let's talk about the one thing that I have always liked about Drake albums. The production. Boy Wonder, Noah Shabib, and even Party Next Door brought some really solid beats to this project that took the spacious atmosphere of Nothing Was the Same and darkened it significantly, with a lot of tracks having a rigid, crackling percussion balanced against moody, yet very melodic synth and piano lines. They never really feel chintzy or unnecessarily creepy like from a lot of DJ Mustard cuts, and a lot of the samples are really on point too, particularly that reoccurring Genuine sample from So Anxious, the simmering piano line on Energy, the scratchy, eerie vibe of Madonna, the trap-inspired pummeling bass of Six God, that sample switch up on the back half of Preach, it almost reminded me of a deep house track, the brittle waves of echoing synth hi-hats, and what sounds like two metal pipes banging across each other on Now and Forever, the more understated elegance of You and the Six and Jungle, and especially that gothic swell, the beat change-up courtesy of Travis Scott and company. Those are all great moments. Now, I've got my usual gripes with Drake's production too. The pitch-shifted vocals aren't always really my thing. The dour atmosphere can be really draining, especially for 17 tracks. This mixtape ran long, and there are a few synth choices that don't always work for me, but that's one element that I just found laughable on this album. It was the inclusion of the gunshot sound effects. You know, I'm sorry, they just don't fit on this mixtape at all, at least for me. Now, some of you are thinking, wait, you listen to a ton of gangster rap, why are you saying that Drake shouldn't use it? It fits the dark atmosphere of the tape. And you know, you'd be right about that. But now we have to talk about the big problem with Drake pursuing more braggadocious material. As I said, Drake often straddles the line between R&B and pure hip-hop, and he does so on this album. And his voice in that vein is often a little bit softer. He gets harsher and more nasal when he raps, but he's not a gritty gangster rapper. And to be fair, he's never played himself as one. But when he's trying to come across as hard, it's just not very believable coming from him. Where other rappers tell stories about selling drugs or gang wars, Drake raps about scamming people over the phone. And the other problem is that if he's trying to play a hard-edged technical wordsmith, well, he's not a great technical rapper, I'm sorry. He frequently rhymes words with themselves. That elongated syllable thing he does gets grating in a hurry. And whenever he attempts to jack other people's flows like a Know Yourself with the Migos flow, it doesn't sound very good over that style of beat. The frustrating thing is that near the back half of this album, he drops songs like 6 p.m. in New York and You and the Six, and they show a lot more lyrical construction and thought than some of his more ignorant material, which begs the question why the hell he's doing all that crap in the first place. And more than ever, Drake's pushing the braggadocious side of him forward on this album, calling out haters, flossing his obscene wealth, being a rapper that basically runs the radio, and responding to critics with a defensiveness I haven't seen since Taylor Swift's Shake It Off. That proves that Drake's a lot more bothered by his haters than he really lets on. But going beyond that, I've got a really hard time buying into Drake's more arrogant and ignorant content for two reasons. The first is, as I've said here before, if your production's gonna be this dark and dreary and ominous, it's trying to pop up an intimidating sound that feels constantly undercut in your more braggadocious material. I just don't buy it. And this is tied to the second problem, that on the majority of these songs, Drake does not sound like he's having any fun. And if he's not enjoying his massive wealth and success, how can I enjoy it? Even the drunken hookup track Madonna just doesn't come across as sexy, it comes across as just kind of creepy. The sort of song that would give a lot of ex-boyfriends bad ideas on 2 a.m. in the morning. But it almost seems like Drake is aware of the fact that his braggadocious side is kind of shallow and it lacks meaning. There are snippets of line all across this album where he seems to indicate some self-awareness here, but once again, most of it is subtext, not outright text, and it constantly undercuts some of the more straightforward, ignorant party tracks. If he's trying to get ignorant for a minute, why have subtext undercutting it all of it? Now, I'll be honest, when Drake does get to a little bit more introspective with more of an R&B flavor, like on Jungle and the label Exodus track Now and Forever, the songs get a lot better in my mind. My favorite song on this album, though, is the letter to his mother, You and the Six, where his frustration starts to really leak through and he says he can't be vulnerable in this industry, they'll tear him apart. Drake, if you happen to be watching this, and I know you're probably not, I got a question for you. Why can't you be vulnerable? You probably don't listen to Sadistic or Atmosphere or Sage Francis or Mike Eagle, but I know you listen to J. Cole. Like him, you're one of the rappers who could bring more introspective vulnerability into your music, and your fan base would definitely embrace it. They'd probably appreciate it. For as much as you might brag about changing the sound, you might have done it instrumentally, but you're trying to ride a very shallow wave lyrically that I'd even argue you don't like. Hell, on the final track, 6 p.m. in New York, you started to get a little bit political with some pretty good social commentary, but then you immediately backed away, saying they scared the truth, so back to me showing out in public. Drake, I'm starting to think you're more scared of the truth. You're certainly scared of some of your competition here, because otherwise, you'd actually name the people you're dissing on this album and put your money where your mouth is. And I don't care about your $30 million mortgages. How's the interest payments and property taxes on those, eh? If you're gonna complain about girls blowing money on bottle service and you can't find someone down to earth, it's a little bit contradictory when you blow money on strippers across most of this album and behave like a lecherous creep who makes midnight calls, drunken midnight calls at that, and brings a knife when he tries to hook up with girls. What do you think they're gonna do to you, man? Oh god, this record really frustrates me because I actually want to like it a lot more than I do. The production is really solid, I like it, and when Drake does try, he can drop some pretty great, well-structured bars. Might as well mention his guest stars here, they don't do anything all that special. Party Next Door sounds like a cast-off wannabe from the Future and T-Pain school, and Lil Wayne's verse is forgettable, but you know what? The problem is the majority of Drake's bragging is just not interesting. It's not colorful or funny or all that energetic, and that means when he tells his audience to keep track of his success, I'm not given any reason to care. As I said, the album is decent, and for me, it does get a 6 out of 10 and a light recommendation. If you're a fan of Drake's more hip-hop side, I know some of you are. And if nothing else, if you're reading this, It's Too Late does convince me that Drake could make a powerful, genuinely intelligent rap album. He just chooses not to in favor of this stuff. And you know what? That's the real disappointment. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can't imagine how this review is going to prove remotely controversial, but please be a little bit civil in the comments. I want to like this album, believe me, I do. If there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, You're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.